Good evening. I'd like to open the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting. Today is Wednesday, August 10th. It's 7 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is delegations, an opportunity for the public to speak to any item on our agenda. Seeing no public here, I think it's safe to say we have no delegations tonight. And next on the agenda is a presentation of the June 30, 2021 audit. We have our auditors here who are ready to present to us in regard to their work to date and where we stand.
Okay.
If you'd like, you could come to the podium and state your name and address, company for the record.
Good evening. My name is Ron Nossick. I am the engagement principal from Clifton Larson Allen for the audit of the town of East Lyme. And with me is Dave Hansen. Dave was the engagement manager, so Dave basically ran the day-to-day field work, if you will, of the engagement. I have the overall review and signing responsibility of the financial statements once they are in a position to be issued. So that's basically our roles from a pretty high level. I believe you have all received a draft copy of the financial statements, and hopefully you all also have this slide deck. Okay, just to, I guess, catch you up to speed as to where we are. Clearly, we're in a draft position with the financial statements. Dave and I are still discussing some issues that we know are going to make some changes. We perceive them to be classification changes at this point in time. So from the perspective of equity or fund balances and things of that nature, we don't anticipate any changes from what you see in the draft that's currently in your custody. But we do think some line items are going to change along the way, especially in the front two statements, the government-wide statements. And then we also know we've got some reclassification to do in the budgetary statements, which are in the back, RSI 1 and exhibits A1 and A2. Or I guess just A1, right? Yeah. So that's pretty much where we are. From a time frame perspective, we've got the cleanup of the financial statements, which we anticipate will be through in a day or two. We've got some work relative to our audit binder that we have to complete, just wrap up and cross our T's and dot our I's. Then that gets submitted to our national assurance technical team for a national review. So it's got to go through that process still. That process right now is about an 8 to 15 day turnaround. So we're probably looking at the end of the month for issuance. They will, at that point in time, they'll review the audit, the state single audit, and we anticipate having the federal single audit to them as well at the same time. So they'll review the entire binder. The reality of it is the audit and the state single audit might get to them a little bit earlier, and we may have to flip the federal single audit to them a little bit later, because we still do have one program to complete some testing on. There was a FEMA program that dates back some time. All of the expenditures occurred quite some time ago, but the revenue was finally received in fiscal 21, which triggers the federal single audit, even though the expenditures took place some time ago. We weren't certain. We were looking for guidance from FEMA relative to that. We weren't certain if it was going to trigger that program as a major program for the federal single audit or not. It did. So we held off on it until we got some definitive clarity on it, and we have received that clarity. So we'll move forward and get that done. I believe Dave's going to touch base with Anna tomorrow, and we'll get what we need from the finance office and complete that work as quickly as we can. So I'm going to take you through some financial highlights. If you look at this slide deck, first I'll talk about the scope of the engagement, so just give you some background as to what it is we actually do. The expected reporting results, because as I said, we are in draft and there may be some changes. I'll go through really few some financial highlights, and then just touch on the required communications that will be coming to you subsequent to issuance. They will come just to this board. So the terms of the engagement, we're performing this actually under 3 sets of standards. So there's an audit performed under generally accepted auditing standards, which is the primary standards that oversee the financial statements here in the town and in any audit. That's what basically the standards are relative to any audit engagement that's performed. We're also performing work under governmental auditing standards, generally accepted governmental auditing standards, which is often referred to as Yellow Book. And what that does is it requires us to gain an understanding of your internal control structure around financial reporting, document that understanding, and integrate that into our risk assessment. Just for some reference, in any audit that's performed, there isn't necessarily a requirement to evaluate, to document and evaluate internal controls. You can take a purely substantive approach to an audit, but once Yellow Book is involved, if it is under Yellow Book, you have to go through that work. And then we also have to perform work under uniform guidance, which was formerly the federal single audit, and then the state of Connecticut has its own single audit, so the state single audit as well. Those standards are relatively similar to the Yellow Book standards as it relates to internal control and compliance. The only difference is the spotlight is only on a major federal program or a major state program as opposed to the overall financial reporting entity, if you will. So we're issuing reports under all of those standards, once everything is out on the street, if you will. Under generally accepted auditing standards, that's going to be page 1 of what the financial statements will read when you do get the issued financial statements. So that is our audit opinion on the financial statements, which we're anticipating an unmodified or clean audit opinion on the financial statements, which our opinion will be that they, in our opinion, they do reasonably reflect the financial position and results of operations of the town for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. The nuance I think it's worth considering is that in governmental audits, although it's just one report, if you will, there's actually opinion units integrated into that report. So if you look at the draft, you see those top 2 statements, the government-wide statements, that's one opinion unit. So we're actually issuing an opinion on that. We issue a separate opinion on every single major fund that is in the financial statement. So I believe general fund is always a major fund, so there's an opinion solely on the general fund, your capital non-recurring fund, the bonded fund, the sewer fund. Those are all major funds. So we're looking at them, performing a risk assessment on them, and calculating materiality, which is the basis of the audit, on all of those singularly. And then everything else gets aggregated into non-major programs, and the same thing is done on them. That is an opinion unit, but that materiality is stretched over multiple funds, and usually is a higher base that calculation comes off of. So as I said, under generally accepted auditing standards, we're anticipating an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. Under governmental auditing standards, we're again reporting on internal controls, and we're reporting on any compliance violations, which we determine to be, if a violation is to occur, we determine that the results of that violation would be material to the financial statements. So under internal control, we are going to have an internal control finding. There'll be a significant deficiency over financial reporting. So when you look at the order of magnitude of findings, there's material weakness. That's the highest level of a finding, and then you come down the ladder. So significant deficiency is next down the ladder. So we're defining this as a significant deficiency over financial reporting, and really having to do with the timing of all of this. I mean, we've already completed another fiscal year, and we're still in a position where we haven't issued this report. Relative to compliance with laws and regulations, there were no compliance violations that we detected during the performance of our procedures, so it'll be nothing to report relative to those in that Yellow Book report. Under uniform guidance, there's an opinion issued on compliance under both federal single audit or uniform guidance and state single audit. So we'll be issuing, we anticipate, an unmodified opinion relative to compliance over the federal programs that are deemed major programs. And so, as we said, the FEMA program, that's yet to be tested. So the results that I'm speaking of here could change. We don't anticipate it, but it could. And then also the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which all that testing has been performed. There were no compliance violations. Right now, relative to internal control, the report relative to federal single audit on internal control is unknown at this point in time. We have to look at the controls that were around the FEMA program and then test those controls, and we'll know at that point in time whether or not we have a control matter that reaches the level of significant deficiency or material weakness. So that's yet to be determined. Under Connecticut single audit, all of that work has been completed. Again, we're issuing an unmodified opinion on compliance. There was only one program that met the criteria of major program for the single audit, and that was your drinking water program. Expenditures in there were a little over $2 million. And relative to internal control, there were no deficiencies over internal control that were identified during the performance of our work. So the next slide, I'm on slide 9. I got to put the goggles on now so I can actually see this stuff. And we're just going to really talk about the general fund. And again, for the most part, my conversations are going to be what surplus was for the year and what the fund balance is at the end of the year, because again, as I said earlier, we do not anticipate any changes to these balances. So total fund balance in the general fund at year end was $11,651,773. I believe I've highlighted those numbers for you, but it's in the general fund column, the second to last number down on that column. You'll see the subtotal for total fund balance is $11,651,773. The number that everybody typically is curious of, especially the rating agencies, is what is the unassigned portion of that fund balance. And at June 30, 2021, that's going to be $11,386,721. And a primary calculation that the rating agencies will do is they'll determine what that percentage is to your overall expenditures in your budget. And it's part or a piece of a multitude of attributes that the rating agencies look at in order to give you a bond rating. But that is a significant one, and 15.4%, which that totals out to of your general fund budgetary expenditures, is actually in the upper range of what GFOA and AICPA are now recommending for fund balance levels. They have bounced up over the past 10 years, and when the pandemic started, they actually bounced them up even further because everybody anticipated that there was going to be a drain on fund balances. And then the federal government weighed in and basically took that fear away. But nonetheless, it is in a good position, a healthy position as of the end of June 30. And then the next slide is the operating statement, if you will, so the income statement. And again, just focusing on the general fund, your excess deficiency of revenues over expenditures was $1,515,924. That's about middle of the page. I believe I do have that number highlighted as well. So if you think about it from the perspective of a commercial set of financial statements, this would be operating income. And then you have your non-operating, in the case of government, they call it other financing sources and uses. In this fiscal year, relative to general fund, that was just transfers in and transfers out. The net activity was only about a little over $10,000. So your overall change in fund balance, which I believe I have highlighted, didn't change a whole lot from that operating measurement, if you will. But overall for the year, you ended with a surplus of $1,526,619. The budgetary statement that we do know needs some tweaks, but again, we believe it's all classification tweaks. That's showing, and I have a bullet down here on it, about $2.5 million in surplus. There are some accounting differences between budgetary accounting and GAAP accounting, which this statement that we're looking at right now is under. The primary difference is encumbrances. GAAP does not recognize encumbrances, and obviously your budgetary statement does, so there's going to be a timing difference every year if you have encumbrances at year end on an annual basis. If they ebb down, then it's going to reflect in expenditures, in a different direction. So that's really why 1.526 here in this statement, and a little, almost 2.5 million, I think, in the budgetary statement when it's all said and done. The next slide is a slide relative to your long-term debt. This too, obviously, is something that the rating agencies would be looking at quite heavily. You're fully aware and fully in control of your bonded debt, because it's got to pass here, and it might have to pass a town meeting, and so on down the line. So there should be no surprises there. Total bonded debt, it increased about $11 million year over year, so it went from $55.4 million to $68.4 million. That had just had to do with issuances that were done during the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. I believe there was an issuance that typically, Dave was explaining this to me today, or reminding me that typically you issue in August, but in 2021 issued in August of 2020 and in June of 2021. So I think there was a bump in relative to the amount of issuances the town is usually seeing in one fiscal period. The big thing here, and we talked about this last year, are your pension and Opeb liabilities. And congratulations relative to the pension. That liability decreased $6.7 million to the point that it's now a pension asset. It's a fully funded plan at this point in time. So from the perspective of the debt schedule, it's just showing it zero. Once it gets below zero, it jumps over to the balance sheet and shows as an asset, net pension asset, which will be on that top statement, the government-wide statement, Exhibit 1. That's one of the reclassifications actually that we've got to deal with, because right now it's embedded in another number currently in that draft. Your Opeb liability, it took a good swing down from where it was last year. It went from 9.4 to at the end of the year it's at 4,033,419. So great direction. A lot of that change had to do with market conditions in 2021 that we probably all know from our own investments that pretty much has reversed itself. I listen to Bloomberg radio every morning on the way to work, and I understand today maybe we recovered a little bit, yeah. But it's always going to be subject to the ebb and flow of the market as well as the contributions. But it's not a funded plan, so you're far more reliant on what market activity is doing relative to that OPEB plan. So the last two financial slides, and I presented these to you last year as well, and I think these are pretty useful from a trend perspective. And the first one is the pension liability, and you see the columns 2021, 2020 as you move on down the line. And at the very bottom, you can see the funded percentage of that plan at the end of the fiscal year, and as clearly you can see at the end of 2021 it's 103.17% funded, so therefore it's in an asset position at this point in time. So again, I applaud you for that. This pension plan has always been in a pretty good funded status. I'm never really a point of concern in my history with the town. And then the next one is the OPEB plan, and that history is still building up because the plan hasn't been in place for 10 years. But you can see again where that liability is. And the 4.319825, I don't have it highlighted, but the differences between expected and actual experience, that's basically, that $4.3 million is how much better the market did than what the actuaries anticipated it was going to do, year over year. So that is beneficial. The last section here, these are the required communications, and these are just the titles of all the sections of communications that we will make to you. This would be about a 4-page letter that you'll get at the end of the engagement once we're issued, and it'll describe anything under these categories that we encountered, just to clarify some things for you. Qualitative aspects, if I go down the bullets real quick, qualitative aspects, we'll just talk about the estimates that are embedded in the financial statements, and the fact that, as we all know, estimates sometimes don't work out to be what you estimated them to be. The primary ones here clearly are the pension liability is an estimate, the Opeb liability is an estimate. They're done by the actuaries, not by management, but they are estimates. Your depreciable lives of fixed assets are estimates. The allowance of doubtful accounts are estimates. So all those are embedded in the financial statements. And as I talk about all of these, and I'll move quicker on the rest of them, what they're trying to vet out and allow us to report to you is if management is expressing some type of bias towards the financial statements, in our opinion. Are they making them try to look better than they actually are, or making them try to look worse than they actually are? These are the categories of the AICPA. Then we don't make these up. We have to report to you under these categories and these categories alone. They're meant to vet out any bias that may be expressed by management relative to the financial statement. So when we talk about an estimate, we would also talk in that letter to you that we believe that it is that estimate is too high, or that estimate is too low. And obviously, depending on what the estimate is, it could be making the financial position look better or look worse. Difficulties encountered in performing the audit, those would just be if management was pushing back on, be it accounting standard issues or timing and things of that nature. If they're refusing access to records and things of that nature, we would report to you. We do report to you any uncorrected and corrected misstatements, so that we have to evaluate the order of magnitude of those, especially the uncorrected ones. But your evaluation may be different than ours, so that's why they require us to report those to you, and you can make of them what you wish, or pick up the phone and call Dave or I, and we'll walk you through and give you some greater background if need be. Disagreements with management, we certainly would have to communicate those to you. Those, as it's contemplated in these categories, would mean if we were implementing a standard, or there was a disagreement as to the handling of an accounting standard, that's where disagreements may rise, and we would have to report that to you, because again, it could be an indication of bias. We do get management representation letter from management, so from finance, and we'll get one from the chief financial officer or the superintendent of schools, one of the two over at the school department, that basically clarifies who owns what relative to the engagement, because we don't own the financial statements. They are management's assertions of the financial position and results of operations. We're here simply to issue an opinion on those financial statements, and that's basically what that letter is about. Management consultations with other independent accountants, basically opinion shopping. If we had a difference of opinion and we couldn't, decide or agree on something, and management went to another accounting firm to ask an opinion relative to what we were in disagreement about, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean that they can't do that or shouldn't do that, but we would be required to report that to you. And then significant other issues discussed with management prior to the engagement. That would be if management ever said to us, and trust me, we don't anticipate any bad communications coming out of here, but I've been doing this for 37 years, so I have seen instances And in this instance, it would be management saying to us, if you don't do this, you're not getting the audit engagement. So clearly you would want to know that. And then if there's any significant findings or issues that were discussed or the subject of correspondence with management in and along the timeline of the engagement, we would report those to you as well. So those, again, will all come once we've issued the financial statements. And then finally, I'm just giving you my contact information and Dave's contact information. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us. So that's all I have for you tonight. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have. If I can't answer it tonight, or if Dave can't answer it, then we'll certainly get back to you once we gather the answer.
Thank you. And I appreciate the work that you've been doing with the town. I know we've had a lot of different things going on and some staffing issues, and we've had, problems getting things to you on a timely basis. So I just, want to make sure, we understand that the lateness of this is on our end, not yours. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and. We know that it's important and have plans to make sure that going forward we'll get everything to you in a timely manner.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So we're not here again. I don't know whether folks have questions. Go ahead.
Just a real quick one. If I understood you correctly, the significant deficiency over financial reporting on slide 6, that was primarily due to the lateness of getting all the data to you, and that we're running into the next fiscal year, that our internal controls, whereas last year we had some issues with those are in place and correct at this point?
The finding last year, yes, was corrected. That had to do with really the order of magnitude of audit adjustments that we had, that we brought to management. Management agreed with us and posted them. That wasn't the case this year. We didn't find that to be a problem, but clearly the timing. We'd be foolish as auditors if we didn't say you need to look at something relative to this. And I think I apologize. I remember your face from last year. I don't know which the rest of you that were on the board last year or not. But at some point, I know Ann is retiring. I said this last year that it really would be worthwhile to, put together some type of committee internally, if you needed an external facilitator or whatever, to go through the financial close process and first define responsibilities. Who's got to do what, and then do some type of an evaluation as to what the time burden is going to be in order to complete that task, because Chairman, you indicated it, and it's very clear to us. There's not enough staff here. There's not enough man hours to do what you need to do, and your day-to-day tasks still keep coming. So it really would be worth the evaluation, and there's probably. I know not many do it, but there's probably workarounds where if there are tasks that don't need a lot of institutional knowledge, that perhaps once a year you go out to Robert Half or account temps or somebody and get 2 or 3 people in here for a month to help facilitate that process. And now you haven't brought someone in full payroll for forever and ever, but you solve a problem that clearly exists now and might still exist down the line, because I'm not a fool to say we're going to hire 10 people in the finance office. Your taxpayers would probably have a revolt. So, but you got to figure some workaround relative to it. So,
thank you.
Yep.
This one, the question I had on fund balance, I guess based between GAAP and budgetary, the $1,386,000 that we have for the unassigned fund balance, for budgetary, we'd have to decrease that by the encumbrances at the end of the year?
There's other nuanceical stuff that is in the budgetary statement that isn't in the GAAP statement, but that's usually the primary reason why there's such a swing between the two.
Okay.
But I don't have that information tonight, but we can certainly get it to you by tomorrow to let you know exactly what the differences are relative to the
that.
two statements. Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I just, appreciate you guys, the most you can do to help us
Sure.
get this thing done and report it to everybody so we can
So we can start
worry about
2022.
on next year. We appreciate it.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. I just, I don't want to end that on like this negative deficiency, because I want to also point out that we had a rating agency review not long ago that, spoke very highly of the management practices and in other respects that got us to this great funded balance and a strong financial position and well-funded pension. So lots of good things going on.
Absolutely.
Just need to work on getting the right help when we need it.
Yep.
So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. Good night. Next on the agenda, the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of July 13th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Approval of the regular meeting minutes for the East Lyme Board of Finance on July 13th, 2022.
Do I have any discussion or corrections? Oh, should I have gotten a second? Sorry, we have a second?
I'll second,
Second,
and then
okay.
I've also got
Yeah,
a
go
discussion.
ahead.
On page 3, under board comments, it's just kind of a typo or language. Mr. Steele stated that he is support of paying the appraisal costs. It should be either is supportive or supports. So,
Okay.
And there was just one clerical error on page 1 where it says, first selectman report given by Dennis.
Yeah, I was
Should be
gonna,
Denise.
I was gonna point that out too.
Uh,
Yes. I always know when I have a one of those callers trying to sell
Yeah.
you something when they ask for Dennis Hall. So, I also, and I'd ask for your help, on the first page of when I was talking about paying of taxes, I don't really recall saying all the avoid waiting by, paying online, paying by mail, using the drop. I'm not sure I was that, all good information, but I just don't remember that fulsome of a response.
I agree with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it might have been pulled in, so maybe we just cut that out. The other thing I also just wanted to clarify was on page 2, under the Director of Finance report, in the third bullet point where we said brief discussion was held on amending the policy to change the minimum percentage allowed to 15% from the current 7%. I think we were having the discussion that we had reached 15%. We might want to address the policy, but I don't want the minutes to clearly state we're going to 15% in case after our discussions we don't go to 15, because then it looks like we tried to back off something. So I would, I think we just need to amend that to just say to change the percentage to be maintained in the unassigned fund balance in the fund balance policy. Do you agree with that? Anyone have anything else to? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes with the mentioned corrections just made, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed,
I
motion.
wasn't present, but I did watch the meeting on it.
Okay, carries 500. Next on the agenda is reports by the first selectman, Mr. Siri. How are you tonight?
I'm fine, thank you. And like I said, I wasn't at the last meeting because just before I called you, Denise, or Dennis, the manager of the East Lyme Little League team said they were playing for the championship against Waterford that night and would appreciate my attendance. So I thought, like, Board of Finance, and I took me,
Choice.
yeah, there was really no choice. And they won that night, and then they went on to finish basically second in the state in the Little League from the 12-year-olds. And our the next age group down did equally well too. So at the selectmen's meetings, we're going to ask to have the coaches and players come in for recognition too. So they did a great job all season long. I think it's at the 12-year-old level. I think it was the 80s. It was the last time an East Lyme Little League team went this far in the state tournament. Moving on, you're mentioning he was mentioning hiring. We've been doing a lot of that lately. Tomorrow I'm meeting with Anna's successor he hasn't signed the letter yet. I think I may have told some people his names, but until he actually signs the letter tomorrow, we won't announce his name, but he's coming in and to meet. We have agreed on all the terms of his contract and so forth, or his hiring and so forth like that. So I've invited Denise to be here tomorrow when he comes in to do his paperwork to meet with him. He's slated to start on the 26th of September, so of August, I'm sorry, 26th of August. So we'll have a 4-day turnover with Anna that week. We have 5 candidates that are moving forward in the IT area. They were interviewed yesterday. We had 11 people brought in for interviews. They're moving 5 on for a second round of interviews. Our Parks and Rec director, we've identified someone, Jerry Token, he lives in Waterford, but he's been working in Groton for several years. He signed his contract or signed his letter, and he's coming in tomorrow too as well. He'll be taking over on the officially on the 9th of September, but he'll be starting on the 6th, Tuesday the 6th. Have a few days of turnover with Dave, so we're excited about that. So we're all set there. Moving on, if you all know, at long last, the Starlight Motel is almost non-existent. It's pretty much gone. In the process of starting the process, they called before they dug, but they dug in the wrong place, and as a lot of people had brown water for a few days because they hit a water main, so it was, a little, disconcerting to some of the residents, rightly so, for a few days, but that was all cleared out. Interesting, there's also a Route 161 corridor study that's part of all this, and that's going to involve basically all the improvements or construction from the high school on 161 all the way down to the end of the Route 161 runs into 156. The first phase is the one that takes up to roughly Industrial Park Road, and then the second phase, which will be years down the road, will be from Industrial Park Road down to 156. Some of the things being discussed in that will be the sidewalks along Gorton Pond, other improvements as well. But on October 27th is the date right now. It's Thursday, and they're going to come in and do a presentation up at the high school for people that would be interested. They've done a really good job of communicating with us what's going to be happening. They know it's going to start. They'll have much better dates in October as far as when they'll start. As I said, next spring and summer probably not so much because they'll probably try not to do too much then, but spring and fall are going to be challenges for construction and traffic and so forth. They don't anticipate any problems with the traffic regarding the tearing down of the buildings. They don't think that'll impede the flow once school starts. They think they'll all be confined to the site. East Patagonia, we submitted a preliminary grant application through the Southeast Connecticut Council of Governments for anywhere between $300,000 to $3 million for a road that needed some upgrade or safety improvements, and we identified East Pat from 161 to 156 for need of sidewalks, and where there are sidewalks, replacing them, and some road improvements too. Ours, only 3 of the applications submitted were asked to come back and submit full applications for considerations. ours was 1. We were ranked a 2nd. So Alex Close, our town engineer, did a great job on that. So that has to be submitted by the end of next month. We have to, it would be fully, if approved, it'll be fully funded. We don't have to spend anything. It's just we have to provide the engineering, and because of what's involved, we have the in-house resources to do that. So that'll save us some there. So that is exciting, and it'll address a definite concern that we always hear about, the need for sidewalks. Alex has also done something to where we're going to be moving forward with a request for having to get some funding through Eversource to put in 4 EV charging stations, one in the public lot directly across from the Mexican restaurant down here, and then one on Methodist Street where there's that little public parking area, one in Town Hall in the parking lot here, and the other one be at the high school, or by the Board of Ed building. Town Hall and the high school are identified because if we ever get to the point, which we will, of electric vehicles for the town or Board of Ed, we'll have the charging there. We would own those. There'd be a little bit of an outlay, but we would own those, and we could charge people to use them and so forth like that. You obviously have to be competitive because everybody checks their phones now to see who has the best price for everything. So, but we are moving forward in that, and that's also helping us in the Connecticut sustainability process too, for keeping us, green and so forth like that. So that's been worked on too. Garbage bins, we're looking, tonight you would have been asked to approve 2 garbage bins, one for in front of the movie theater, one down near the Black Sheep, that were big things that would compact the garbage, compact the recycles, and it would do a lot to alleviate the garbage buildup. They even will email you and tell you they're full, come empty them. But the trouble is, we would have used the NIP money we got for this, but the cost was over $10,000, so we couldn't do it because it would have required a town meeting, and we didn't want to do that for one meeting, which will be a charter revision question, something we'll look at there. But expect that coming soon. Update on the Amtrak fence. I've had communication with them. No change there. She does get back to me very quickly. She says, nope, no change. We'll let you know. We're going to put in that test, that facility, the fencing down in Groton, but nothing update on that. Airbnbs are becoming a concern. We're hearing a lot from people about, places for one-night rentals, to where some misinformation has gotten out there that we're going to completely get rid of short-term rentals, and it's going to be done soon. That's not the case at all. We do want to address the concerns some of the areas have, but we want everybody involved in the solution. Nothing is going to be decided in the next month, the next few weeks. This will be a situation because there are several people that rent by a weekly basis in the summer and never have had a problem. We don't want to obviously adversely affect that. There are some concerns. We want input from those affected and those who have the short-term rentals to be part of the solution. So we'll be moving forward with that coming up. Phishing, we've gotten a lot of that. I had town employees saying they got emails from me asking for gift cards. I didn't. There was another thing sent out today, not to open things and so forth like that. So I think one of the things the IT director will be able to do is start identifying, don't open these if you see these, especially on your phone, because what you might see on your computer, I can tell this is it, but on your phone you might see differently. So I think that'll be a good thing in there. Fortunately, no problem has been, we've been able to overcome everything. Last thing, charter revision, we're going to probably give a charge and an appointment for committee members sometime in September. It has to be between 5 and 15 members. We're probably looking at 9 or 11. And the Board of Selectmen, we had talked about this last meeting, we'll probably have just a finite number of issues to forward to them, and then they'll start their process with what has to be done, public hearings where they receive, because once you open the charter up, the entire thing's opened up. And one of the things we're thinking of too is the budget process. I mean, we approve things at the selectmen level, your level, at the town budget referendum, and then we start all over again. We have to reapprove it, you have to reapprove it, and then a town meeting. And it's such a $10,000 is the threshold, so we want to look at that and some other items as well. But as we'll be asking, and that committee will ask other boards for their input too as we move along. So moving that, and that pretty much covers it. Yes, John.
Could you give us an update on the status of the building where the Sif Bakery is going in?
Yes, it's supposed to be probably the late September. They, like several other people, including Electric Boat, they had some type of electrical connection box that was required. The supply stopped, and that's why that came to a grinding halt. That thing was going so fast, but they hit, like so many other places, the supply chain problem. As soon as they get that, they'll be able to complete their construction and get it ready to go.
And what else is going in?
There's going to be basically a stop and go
Gourmet Galley.
galley. What?
Gourmet Galley.
Gourmet galley. I couldn't think of the name. Very much like an Ivy's or like what was the best of everything. You go in and pick up a meal. It's all set to go. And then there's a local merchant that's going to be moving down there at the first of the year. I don't know about the fourth one, and I don't know the names of most of the people that rented, so bought upstairs. But anyway, but that was the thing that slowed them down quite a bit. And the Five Churches, which is going in the Morton House, he's hoping for the end of September to be opening there.
So what exactly will that be?
That Five Churches will be a brewery. And they'll also have a light menu there too, to where you'll sit on the patio, or if you're sitting inside at the bar, you're actually overlooking Long Island Sound. You're not faced away from it. The windows will be there, and then there'll be like a little area for seating and so forth like that.
But the units above are still the
units
same.
above are still going to be there.
Looking through the beautiful Amtrak fence.
Well, yeah, and I did on Celebrate East Lyme Day. Senator Blumenthal was here, and he was talking. He asked me, he said, how are things going with the fence? And I told him, he goes, well, make sure you keep me up to date on that. So I definitely will keep him up to date. I do have a contact in his office that he's given me, and they've been very responsive. So anyway.
Well, you didn't point out that the New York Times mentioned East Lyme.
The New York Times did mention East Lyme and the Main Street and so forth like that. That was precipitated by the owners of 185 Main Street.
Yeah.
So, we did get mentioned there, too. And also, too, I should have mentioned, too, back with the demolition, the car wash has been sold, and as promised, as soon as they took ownership of it, they got rid of the garbage and cleaned out the grass and so forth like that, and we're hoping that moves. So by winter time, when it snows and you want to get your car clean, when it warms up a little bit, that'll be ready to go.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but someone asked me, and I couldn't remember. Where does the town stand with the question of the accessory dwelling unit? We had to either opt in.
We opted out.
So,
We did, yes. And here again, it wasn't because it's just that really no impact had been done. We didn't anticipate 50% of the town doing it or that, but what would the impact be on educational services, and we felt it needed a little bit more thorough look before we do that. Because Rocky Neck Village has brought a lot of more students in and so forth like that, so we're, and we want to welcome everyone to town. We want to be sure anyone who would like to live here has that ability, but we want to be,
sure we do it right.
Especially with the accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
Neighborhoods, are they really built? Septics, there's a whole lot of questions.
Great. Does anyone have anything else?
Just one question has to do with the Park and Rec. I know nobody ever got back to us. I know we bought that new tent. I think it got destroyed in the wind.
Yes.
Do we know what's ever going to come back? Or
they're going to come back. They're going to give us some money back for the tent, and we're going to, this is what I was told. They're going to refund the money, take the tent, and then we'll go out and look probably for someone else to purchase the next tent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Next, Anna Johnson, probably doing her last report to the Board of Finance here.
Good evening. So the reports this month are really the first month of our new fiscal year. So on both the revenue reports and the budget reports that you received, in the expenditure column, you see exactly what we expended during the month. So, I would like to point that out. And looking at our year-over-years, I think we did a little bit better in our, our tax collections as opposed to last July. However, don't be surprised if the number goes down a little bit in August, because a lot of it is timing and what comes in at the very end of the month, because most people tend to wait until the end of the month, and then you also have that,
I
the
think
first,
August 1st was
August
the
1st.
final date
and so
without
that's,
penalty.
exactly, so that kind of impacts sometimes your July and August numbers. So just thought I would mention that. And then if you look at the revenues, so clearly if you were saying we were going to get 1/12 of all of our revenues every month, that would be 8.3%. So if you look at, like, for example, building permits, that's one of the one of our higher revenues every month. We're at 5.7 for the month of July, so that's like a little below that benchmark if you look at it. But then if you look at conveyance taxes, we're approaching 16% in the first month, so that's outstanding. And the same, we're a little over on the town clerk fees, and we're a little under on landfill fees. We were at 6.6% for the month of July, which is kind of odd, but nonetheless we were. So I just thought I would point those items out to you. And then again on the budget summary, I've highlighted certain revenues and expenditures for the month. And then I will mention that today, I am happy to say that I received notification from the state that we will be receiving the local share of the second tranche of the America Rescue Fund. So we'll be receiving it's $938,906. So those funds have to deal with the 2.7 million appropriations that were done with the understanding that we wouldn't move forward with any of those projects until the funds were received. With regards to the remaining funds, which are the funds associated with our council, the Southeastern Council of Governments, the state has disclosed to us that we will receive those funds within 30 days of when they receive them. So at this point, based on that information, I would have to say that the state has not yet received those funds. They're doing it a little bit differently this time around than they did the first time. The first time they distributed all of the funds, both the local share and the Council of Government shares, all at one time. So anyway, does anyone have any questions?
No.
I got one. Oh, I got a couple. When going through the financial statements that just sent out for last year, there was, we've been dealing with that internal service fund issue.
Yes.
So it was in the financial statements, it was reduced by $280,000. Does that address that amount that we've been carrying on the balance sheet?
So what that has to do with is part of the incurred but not reported, and so that has to do with so because it was a self-insured plan, when we left the self-insured plan and went to the state plan, the former carrier has so many months after we stop with them.
I understand the calculation.
So what happened is there was a large claim on the Board of Education side that at the very end was submitted, and because our fund was closed and we didn't have the resources, they agreed to allow us to, pay it off in monthly payments. So they agreed to allow us 2 years to pay it off, and so so that's what that shows, is the reduction of the IBNR that remained, because that was part of it.
So the 280 came from the Board of Ed to pay that down?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But they're still showing the 926 on the,
So
or is that going to be a journal entry when we close
well,
out?
what that has to do with is the the funds that the general fund subsidized that fund with. So what we had talked about is, so like, for example, on the town side, at the end of 6/30/22, we had some remaining health insurance funds, so we transferred that into the internal service fund to help reduce that $926,000 by a portion of it. And so when myself and the Board of Ed Director of Finance, we discussed trying to eliminate that over a 3 to 5 year period.
Okay, if you could memorialize that before your final day, just so we could.
Yeah, I actually had, and I believe it was prior to the election in 2021, given a report to the Board of Finance regarding that discussion.
Okay, just so we don't forget about it, because it's going to go away eventually.
Okay.
What else was there? Another question I had was, but the question I had to Ron on the undesignated fund balance, the statement that you'd been giving us had the at the end of the year at $9,660,000, and this financial statement had it at $11,386,000. Is that the encumbrances? Is that the difference in that amount?
It would.
Should I wait for his statement?
It would be related to that, but I also believe so. There are other funds that are wrapped up into the general fund. For example, the Parks and Recreation Special Revenue Fund, the Probate Fund, and so some of that is related to them. And there's a statement that is at the end of the audit. It's G3 or G4, which did not come with the copy that was provided to you, and so they are aware, and they're going to send that over. So you'll see some of the difference in that as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're, unassigned fund balance is it's the same here and same there. We're
Correct.
following the same number.
Yep.
I just wanted to also point out, we all had in our reports the ratings report from S&P, and so I think there was some great stuff in there in regards to strong management policies and practices. I know I said that to the auditor, but we just want to thank you, because this is your last meeting, and I think we are in a really good place, and this rating report by the rating agency, I think, really reflects it. The one thing though that I think we want to work on, it does point out that we don't have a formal debt management policy, and I think that would be a good practice, because I think this board has said we want to focus on practices that will help us to get an uptick in the rating agency, in our rating from the agency. So that would be something that we'd want to work with the first selectman and the next finance director. I got a copy of West Hartford's today. That also hadn't been updated in quite a while, but a good place to start from. So just want to congratulate you on that.
Yeah, I included it in the packets because the board was going to be looking at doing some changes to the fund balance policy, so I thought it would be good, good materials for the board to take a look at for some, for some insight and background.
Great. Thank you. Everyone else good with Anna? Okay, moving on to new business. Authorization, payment of invoices for cleaning out old police building.
One of the things is, we went through that, there was 15 years of stuff that had built up in that building. The police had emptied out all the stuff that they had needed as far as any, shredded stuff that needed to be done. And to the resources needed to dedicate to cleaning that out, and we'd have to have rented some stuff anyway. We did have some money in there, as you can see here, in the bond premium funds. So we were able to retain a company and at a very reasonable amount of money. As you can see here, it was only $1,466. They initially quoted us about $1,800, so it turned out less than that. It was amazing what they did. There were some things in that building, especially in the basement. I have no idea how they got in there in the first place. They got everything out. So the building is, you know, pretty much totally cleaned out right now. So it was definitely something that, because if we had to call our town people in on an overtime basis, it would have been far more expensive than that, plus whatever resources we would have had to rent. So the only thing is a lot of the scrap metal and that they got to keep rather than us keep it, but that was well worth it. So I think it's a very good expense.
When the police moved out of that building, were they able to take anything out to clean it up?
They took a lot of stuff out, but they left a lot behind. A lot of furniture that had no value at all was left behind. In some of the locker rooms, they left shampoo containers in the shower area and stuff like that. So, and no one would own up to it. It was theirs. We had lockers in there, the old lockers that were empty and so forth like that. So there was no need for any of those. And here again, that scrap metal and stuff like that. So everything that could possibly be of use was taken out of there.
Okay.
Have a motion?
Okay, move to authorize payment of invoices from H.A. Latham Moving and Storage and Calamari C&D totaling $1,466.40 for cleaning out and the remaining furniture, equipment, and trash from the old police building, source of funds, premium dollars.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries 500. Next, a carryover of remaining funds for contingency.
This is good news and saving money and putting it someplace else. So I'm going to let Anna address this one.
So we, at the end of every fiscal year, we have been carrying over the remaining balance that we have in the contingency account into the subsequent year, you know, in the event that we need it, since it's something that, you know, the thought process was that it's something that's already been budgeted for, if you will. And then this year, there really is a struggle with regards to inflation and pricing on goods that we purchase. So this would just give us a little additional buffer in the event that we have departments that may need to come back to us for additional funding.
Okay.
Just one question.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Move to approve the carryover of the remaining balance of $58,602 in account 01-01-120-200-500 contingency from the 2021-22 budget to the 2022-23 fiscal year.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
Just one question. So the total balance of that account will be $233,602.
When we
Am I
do,
looking at that correctly? Adding the 58,000 to the 175?
right, it would increase it, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries 500. Next, a carryover of the remaining retirement liability balance.
Yeah, so We started this account, including this account in the budget back in the 17-18 fiscal year. As you know, at the end of the year, we noticed the unfunded liability related to you know, leave balances that various groups of employees had on the books, and we knew at some point that we were going to start seeing, you know, turnover and retirements, and it is really starting to happen. So the chair had asked that I put together something for the board to, you know, help, you know, get a little bit more perspective on it. So there was a spreadsheet included in your folders this evening, and it shows what the adopted budget for the retirement liability account is, what we've carried over, what the available balance during the fiscal year has been, and then what how many payout, what the payout total was, end of year balance, and then the number of payments. So you can see back when we started, the number has really been creeping out. Last fiscal year, we had 10 different payouts. Granted, we had some employees that left maybe after just a couple of years with us, so their balances weren't as high as employees that have been around for a longer period of time. But nonetheless, you can see the number of payouts that that we had to deal with. And this fiscal year, we've already had one payment of, you know, a little over $5,000, and there's another one that we'll be processing in the upcoming week. So. You know, I think it's you know, a good idea for, you know, for the town to carry the funds over, and you can see the balance we'll have available is, you know, a little, you know, about 30% of what our liability at 6/30/21 was, and I kind of put the balance by group of employees for you to you know, gain some kind of a perspective.
Yeah. And I asked for this mainly because this was something that when I was in West Hartford could be very alarming, because all of a sudden you would find out that, you know, 15 firefighters or police officers were putting in for retirement, and it's not just that they're retiring, but they may have 50, 100, 200 carryover days that calls for a lump sum payout upon retirement. So it can, you know, really put a hole in your budget if all of a sudden you've got to come up with $1 million, you know, to take care of all those retirements. And, you know, obviously that was a much bigger town with a much larger workforce. But, you know, I think as we're seeing, not just in the pension, but in this, as our workforce gets a little bit older, we could see this starting to creep up. So something that I think it's a good practice to put this aside, but also just to keep an eye on it so that we can view this trend as we go forward. So do I have a motion?
Yeah. Move to approve the carryover of the remaining balance of $234,140 in account 01-01-114-100-128, retirement liability, from the 2021-22 budget to the 2022-23 fiscal year.
A second.
Any discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries 5-0-0. So next is the discussion and possible amendment of the fund balance policy. So at the last meeting, we included the current fund balance policy, and we've been talking about it a little bit, and since the last meeting and since getting the rating agency report, and also kind of looking at what other towns do, Anna and I were saying, I don't think we're ready to adopt an amendment here, but we wanted to talk about some of the things that we thought we should tweak in the fund balance policy, and discuss that tonight, and then bring back a draft change. So last meeting, you got a chance to look at it. We got a chance to talk about it a little. We're going to talk about it here, and then see if we can do it like a track change to finalize it. So, we talked about the fact that we're maintaining this 15% fund balance, and the rating agencies were very positive about that 15%. And so it would be good if we formally increased it. My question is, do we want to state it as 15% is now the minimum for that undesignated fund balance, and then you have, one bad month and something happens, and now you're out of policy? So I was thinking perhaps something where we said we are going to strive to maintain a range of between 12 and 15%. 12% would still be a big jump from our current policy, but it wouldn't, set off alarms if we dropped from 15% to 14.5%. So that's, I would open that up for discussion and whether you think a range is better. I think, I know that the rating agencies want to see a history of being up at 15%. But I'm not sure, they want to see results more than just what's on paper. But I think to get something on paper saying we want to have it, much higher than the 7% that's in there, but get it up to that 12 to 15. But
Yeah, this, if I may, this last rating that we did, it was the first time that the agency representative even talked in terms of if we continue to see your fund balance level the way it is, you might be in line for a rating upgrade. I mean, they've never talked, we haven't ever had them talk in terms of that. But this, with 6/30/22, is the third consecutive year that we have had such good positive end-of-year operating results. And so they've already seen a trend of us going to hovering over that 8% level and getting ourselves up to a 15% level. So that's a positive factor. So.
Does the language impact, the language either soft, like we'll try to get to this range, versus we will be at this range?
it'll be maintained.
Does that impact, or does the rating agency care about the language, or do they just care about the history?
Well, I think it would be a combination of two. So, in other words, currently our policy says 7%.
Right.
And so, boards change, and so philosophies of boards can change. So if there's something in black and white, it helps, support maintaining certain levels. And so that's one piece of it. And then the other piece is what your actual results are.
Right.
Yeah, I'm more for guidelines. I don't want to be, have something where it has to be this, but I would be open to range between 10 and 15%. I think 10 is about the lowest that rating agencies or governments want to see you at, and 15 is anything above that, you're really
Taxing too much.
Taxing too much. And that gives enough range depending on economic conditions. We can, if we need to use more fund balance to give people a break during any tough times, or if we know that something good is, the next year is going to be better, something we're anticipating some more revenue down the road, then we can strive to the 15.
Yeah, I agree with your philosophy of using a range rather than setting a mark, especially one like 15%. I agree totally with Paul that I think the range should be 10 to 15 rather than 12, because current circumstances, we don't know a lot of things that could drastically impact the budget. And as you mentioned, with our aging employee population, some of these numbers that we're seeing here, even though we're kind of padding those funds, we could have a heavy hit one year. And I think the 10 to 15 points us in the right direction, but allows for us to still be in compliance and not be out of protocol or procedure.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Rich and Paul. I think over the years, I remember when it was around 8%, and over the years it's been gradually increasing to where we are now, which is 15%. And I think that rating agencies, as Anna said, look at this in a positive view, because we have gradually gone from 8 to 15%. And I think we need a little wiggle room on that percentage that we desire. So I think that the 10 to 15% would be adequate, just in case, like I keep reading about a possible recession. And like Rich said, the numbers that we're looking at now may be different than what we're looking at in a year or two. So I think I would support a change of that 7% to 10 to 15%.
But, everything is a balance too, because on the other side, also the rating agencies, we're, we're right now using a discount rate of 6.5%, and they'd like to see us move it to 6%. So, which would mean more money, towards the pension, even though it looks good right now. It's they want to see that 6%. So. Everything is a balance of trying to keep all of these in healthy ranges. So, at the very least here, what we're talking is increasing that minimum from 7% to 10%, which is, I think, a good jump. I'm wondering whether language to say, with our intent to strive towards the upper range or something like that. We might.
And I think even including 15%, the 15% number is demonstrating that consideration is given to getting us at that point, at that level.
Yeah, I think as Anna said, I think if you give that range, it's implied that that's what you're striving for, especially since we've achieved that through the years. So I don't know that we need to add more language to it.
Yeah, during the rating call, you mentioned the fact that, okay, you're there at the 15, but if it dips to 14.5, but then comes back up, that's not a big problem. But so I think you've addressed everything we can,
Okay. The other thing that we were talking about that we want to do, which I think would also, it segues well into our discussion with auditor, is adding language to define the different categories of the fund balance. So GASB 54 addresses all the different type, the restricted fund balance, the, blah, blah, blah. So we tend to throw these terms around and they have some different meanings. So if we pull in and define those different fund balance numbers and then clearly state where we are with those. So I think that would be add some clarity to it and take away any questions of, oh, well, were we, you've got the general fund unreserved, you've got the general fund total fund, so if we lay it all out in accordance with statement 54, then I think that would.
No, I agree with that. We need the proper definition of what fund balance we're talking about.
Right.
All right, so that's the, go ahead.
And then the one other issue that we discussed is under objectives, number 1, it talks about, adequate reserve to support 1 month of expenditures, the GFOA best practices is at 2 months. So would recommend that the board give consideration to making that change from 1 to 2 months.
And since it's been quite a while since we've looked at this, we were also just talking about, okay, who makes this decision? You know, is it the Board of Selectmen? Is it the Board of Finance? And I think the way we looked at it, and then I looked at a couple of neighboring towns, they had it as the policy endorsement by the chair of the Board of Finance with the policy acknowledgement by the first selectman. So, you know, I think it kind of points out that we owned this, you know, this policy, and, you know, in conjunction with the first selectman. So, would you agree? And I think that's
So
pretty
what I
much how
did-
it was done the last time. But
Yeah, what I had done is, I looked at the date that it was adopted by the Board of Finance, and I actually asked the town clerk to retrieve minutes for me from the meetings around that date. And what actually happened at that time is after the policy was adopted by the Board of Finance, the first selectman reported on it under his report at the subsequent Board of Selectmen meeting and provided the Board of Selectmen with a copy of it. So I think keep that, what the chair is suggesting would keep us in line with
past practice.
what we did the first time, and we would be consistent. And I'll just give a little plug for the work that was done in the town clerk's office. They were actually able, the minutes online only go back, I think, to 2009. So they were actually able to retrieve me, you know, rather promptly, copies of the minutes that I requested, because they just went onto their online portal and were able to do it for me. So that was, it was
Good
kind
to
of,
see.
you know, I thought that was kind of
Progress.
exciting.
Okay, good. So everyone kind of good with where we're
Yes.
going, and then we'll get that, like, mark, change, whatever, out so we can see, and hopefully act on it the next time. Okay. Next, under the new business is E, the audited financial statements.
I would move that we table accepting the June 30th, 2021 audited financial statements until we get the final reports, and if possible, schedule a special meeting when received.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think, so what we have so far still says,
I hate to tell you this, but when you table something, once it's seconded, you vote on it. You can't comment on
oh,
it.
did I do that wrong?
No, once you second it,
Okay.
you say seconded, then it has to go right to a vote if we want to stick with Robert's
Oh,
rules.
thank
Sorry.
you. So, move to table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 500.
Next one,
Yep.
F, authorized retain the services of Clifton Larson Allen LLP to conduct the audit of the town records for the fiscal year June 30th, 2022 at a serve price quoted of $67,625 plus expenses and a 5% client support fee.
Second? Yep. Richard seconds. Any discussion?
I did review it in line with my, as you said, yellow book. I
Book.
have my yellow, I have my yellow book, so it does list all the, you know, the proper reports that we should be getting for next year, any updated changes, so I was fine with the language.
Yep. Agree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries 500. We don't have any old business. We don't have any public for public discussion. Next is board comments. Does anyone have anything that they would like to share? I will just officially say this will be Anna's last meeting, and we thank her for her many years of service, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate having worked with you since December, and you know how much you've helped me come into this spot and figure out the different ways that the town works. So we're going to miss you very much, and we have been very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say also that I've been on this board off and on for a number of years. And I've seen Anna work in her position, and I know some years have been harder than others, but you always come through with a positive result. So I thank you for your service to the town. And like Denise said, we'll miss you.
I think I'll echo those comments. It's been, I think you said 5 years, 6 years, something like that. I've been working with you, and you've been steady and calm and deliberate, and we're going to miss having you.
And I've only got a little bit over 2 years with you, but yeah, you've been a steady voice of reason, very professional, always helpful, always looking for the answers if people have questions, and providing the answers in a timely manner. So thank you for your service, and I think a lot of us getting to this 15% in the undesignated fund balance falls onto your shoulders. So thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah, best of luck. Enjoy your retirement.
Yes. More
Stay
importantly.
busy.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is executive session. So I would like to make a motion that we move into executive session for the purpose of discussion of real estate matters. The Hathaway property.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. 5-0-0. Okay, we're back. We came out of executive session on real estate matters, Hathaway property, with no action taken. Next on the agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.